Hello everyone. Welcome to another part of What If Izuku, Kota and Eri Had the Powers of Shazam. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe and share the video. It really helps me out. I did not write the story. The original writer is Kayadon. Please go support them. Now let us dive in. TCH. How did you find me so fast? Kota had only been transformed for a few minutes. How could news of his location have spread that quickly? Someone nearby reported a lightning strike coming out of a clear sky. All Might said as he pointed at the cloudless night sky. Damn it. This is what I get for saving people. Kota muttered to himself. All Might saw Kota get into a fighting stance, with lightning crackling around him. We don't have to fight. If you surrender and come with me, then perhaps some sort of agreement can be reached. It would be a waste for you and your siblings' talents to go to waste in a cell. All Might may have been known for his fist, but he wasn't above talking things out. Oh, for fuck's sake, will you people stop calling us siblings? Kota groaned. We're not related. If you're not related, then why do you all have the same powers? All Might squinted suspiciously at Kota, fearing the answer to his question. Kota rolled his eyes. We got them from a fucking wizard in a weird cave. Aoi, this needs to be taken seriously. There was a slight edge in All Might's voice. Who gave you those abilities? Why does it matter to you so much? Aoi returned All Might's suspicion with his own. What do you think, we got them from a villain or something? Is there a villain that can even do that? All Might analyzed Kota's words and expressions thoroughly. I can't tell if he's being serious. He seemed genuine when he asked about All for One's existence, but I can be certain. I have to be more direct in my questioning. Did you get your powers from a villain? All Might asked him. Kota rolled his eyes. Oh yeah, of course. We got our powers from a villain. That's why we go around saving people all day and freaking night. It was all a part of our evil plan. All Might was starting to get annoyed with how Kota was blowing him off. Sarcasm won't help you here. I need answers. Why does it matter? Kota asked again. You're gonna try and throw me in a cell anyway, so what's the point? Unless you're scared of something. Or someone. Oh, that's rich? The great All Might? Scared of something? Oh, Midori would be shocked. He doesn't seem like he knows about All for One. But I'm not certain. It could still be a ruse. All Might thought. And then something occurred to him. You mentioned Marvel Midori, but where is he? And Marvel Aka as well? All Might had expected to see the Marvels together, as they usually were. Yet the other two were nowhere in sight. TCH, probably still hiding away. Ever since you stopped going on your stupid patrols, Midori's been having a fucking panic attack. He was so fucking scared that we'd take one step out the hideout and you'd pop up and fight us. Kota scowled at All Might. And of course you had to prove him right, you bunny-haired asshole. That still doesn't explain why they're not with you. All Might pointed out. Because they got on my nerves. Well, Midori got on my nerves, aka didn't do anything wrong, I guess. Kota suddenly felt a pang of guilt, as he realized that when he stormed out on Izuku, he stormed out on Eri too. And she didn't deserve that. Maybe Izuku didn't deserve it either. He was right about All Might. Kota shook his head. No. So what if All Might showed up? I can still take him. So it's just issues with friends? All Might was skeptical. He had to keep his eyes peeled in case the other two decided to pop up. Friends? There. Kota wanted to deny that Eri and Izuku were his friends, but that just felt off. Eri desperately needed friends, and to abandon her and deny their friendship just seemed cruel. And despite how much Izuku got on his nerves, he just couldn't go out and claim they weren't friends. They'd been together too long, had each other's backs for too long. Well, for whatever reason it doesn't matter. I'll give them the same offer I'm about to give you. All Might told him. Surrender, and perhaps one day you can be a hero. A real one. Kota felt his anger resurface. What, just because I don't listen to some assholes in suits I'm not a hero? Not that I want to be one or anything. I just hate how you fuckers decide that just because we don't work for you that means everything we do means nothing. All Might shook his head. It's not about working for us. Most hero agencies work very little with the government, outside of reporting to them and following their rules. It's about making sure all heroes know what they're doing, and have the training to not just fight villains and save civilians, without harming the ones you're trying to protect. We haven't anyone. Except the people we wanted to hurt. We really hurt them. Kota defended. Even so, if we just allow you to continue on, then that sends a message. That it's okay to be a vigilante, as long as you're good at it. All Might explained. Do you have any idea the amount of harm that would do? How many people would attempt to follow in your footsteps, thinking they're capable enough to do what you do, only to be proven wrong and in doing so, harming themselves and the people around them? It would be chaos. Kota actually thought about that for a moment. It was true that the world has no shortage of idiots. After all, Kota could have sworn he'd heard about a trend that involved eating soap and microwaving their phones. However, I doubt as many people would die from that as they would have if we didn't stop those weather-controlling guys or Overhaul. Do you have any idea what Overhaul was doing? Kota asked the hero indignantly. Well, no, considering that you destroyed his entire base. All Might pointed out. He was torturing a little girl, taking her blood to make a quirk erasing bullets. Do you know what he could have done with those? Or how much pain he put that girl through? Kota barked at the hero. All Might was taken aback for a moment. Quirk erasing bullets? Torturing a little girl? No, I have to focus on Aoi for now. I'll talk about this later with Naomasa. As terrible as that may have been, there should have been better ways to handle that situation. That didn't involve Dash. All Might didn't get to finish his sentence before Kota cut him off. We tried. Midori tried so hard to follow the rules and not become a vigilante. We went to the cops. But guess what? They were working for him. They kidnapped us and tried to kill us. What were we supposed to do then? Just lie down and die and let him do whatever he wanted? Kota was getting angrier and more electricity kept crackling off his body. That would be a difficult situation to handle. In that case, I don't fault you for using your powers to defend yourselves, or even save that girl. All Might told him, much to Kota's surprise. However, with your powers, I know you could have easily escaped Overhaul, with the girl, without having to confront him. And while I can understand having an apprehension for law enforcement after your experience with those fake policemen, do you truly believe that all law enforcement was working for him? Kota glared but didn't respond. Had you left with the girl and simply reported it to the heroes, then he likely wouldn't have transformed into that monster and caused all that property damage. All Might told him. And you wouldn't have had to kill him either. Kota was now extremely frustrated, as the hero brought up the sore spot that was Overhaul's death. What if he's right? Did you need to kill him? Did Eri have to do that? Kota shook his head and growled at the hero. No. We're stronger than all those heroes. If he gave us all that trouble, then he probably would have killed all of you. We saved you. All Might was about to speak, but Kota cut him off. No. I've had enough. You came here to take me in. Then let's do this already. And with that, Kota didn't waste another second and shot out a bolt of lightning at the hero. All Might managed to dodge the attack by dashing to the side. Alright, well, if you won't surrender, dash. The hero burst at Kota at full sprint. Kota was taken off guard by the hero's speed and was uppercut into the air. Kota was blasted miles and miles into the air, taking a good few moments to recover and stop himself. Ah, shit. Kota groaned as he held his head. It felt like someone had hit his child form with a sledgehammer right in the chin, and he could swear he heard bells in his head. Before he could do anything about it, All Might jumped up to him and landed a mighty blow, right in the champion's face, causing him to go flying once again, this time downwards. Crash! Kota crashed into the dirt, making a large crater where he had landed. Ah! Kota wanted to vomit. The world was spinning, his head hurt like hell, and he could feel something running down his nose. He wiped whatever it was with his fingers, and then brought it up to eye level. Blood. His nose was bleeding. All Might had made him bleed. It was then Kota understood that he had made a massive mistake. Crash! All Might came down on top of Kota, holding his head down using his massive hand and keeping the rest of him down by digging his knee into his back. Are you ready to surrender now? All Might asked him. Ack. Eat shit. Kota's body glows with electricity, that electricity spreads to All Might. Ag hi. All Might shouted out in pain as Kota's lighting spread throughout his entire body. All Might jumped off Kota and landed a few feet away, taking a few seconds to recover from the lightning, giving Kota time to pull himself off the ground and finally get a look at his surroundings. We're at a park. Probably took me here to avoid damaging anything, or anyone. Kota rationalized. Wait. I need to focus on All Might, not the pow. While Kota was distracted, All Might had charged forward and delivered another blow to the face, knocking back once more. Kota flew through dozens of trees before he managed to stop himself using his flight. But All Might wasn't far behind and he charged forward at Kota ready to deliver another powerful blow, but this time there was enough distance for Kota to react, and Kota dashed to the side, causing the attack to miss, although the sheer air pressure from the mist punched caused tons of trees and grass to be uprooted and blown away. Kota charged back at all might and managed to land a punch on his upper body, knocking the hero back a few feet even as he dug his heels into the dirt. That actually hurt. All Might held the spot where Kota had punched him. It's not too bad, but I definitely can't afford to let him hit my weak spot. Kota flew up a few feet in the air and started raining bolts of lightning down at the hero. But All Might was too fast, and he dodged each bolt with little difficulty. All Might then jumped up at Kota, grabbing his leg and then bringing him back down to the ground, slamming him into the dirt so hard that a whirlwind kicked up and started blowing away at the down trees. Aghh! Kota shouted out in pain. Slam! 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 All Might picked Kota back up and slammed him back down with that same force, over and over again. Kota started coughing blood, as All Might finally let his foot go. The champion in blue was stunned by the pain, unable to move as his body was unused to such punishment. All Might stood over the down child, with his foot raised over him ready to stomp his face in with the full force of One for All. You should have surrendered when you had the chance. However, before All Might could finish him. Throsh! Suddenly he was tackled by Izuku, who burst from the ground beneath him and flew him up into the air at super speeds. Eri flew down next to Kota and looked at him worryingly. Aoi. Are you okay? It took Kota a few seconds to recover, but eventually, he did and he sat up. Do you look ok? Sorry. Eri apologised. No. It's not your fault, Kota told her. He got up and looked at the sky. Midori was right. He's too strong. Too fast. He's too powerful. Even if there's 3 of us dash. We can do it, Eri told him. There was a determination in her voice that Kota had never heard before, and when he looked at her, he found that same determination in her expression. Midori said that we need to bring him up higher. Into the sky. What? Why? Kota didn't fully understand the logic there. Is it because we can fly and he can't? Eri shook her head. If you go too high then normal people won't be able to breathe because there's less air. But we don't need air to breathe, so we'll be fine. Kota didn't know any of that. Although it made sense for Izuku to know. He'd always been looking at books in the library, something Kota told him was a waste of time in the past. Yet another thing he'd been wrong about. Kota shook his head. Can't worry about that. We have to help Izuku. Kota and Eri burst into the sky at max speed, hoping to catch up with their friend. Meanwhile with Izuku and All Might. Izuku brought All Might as high as he could, getting many miles into the air before All Might could retaliate. The hero slammed both his fist into Izuku's back, causing him to stop as he screamed out in pain. All Might picked him up by his cape, held him up to eye level, and punched him in the face, knocking him away. Just as All Might was about to kick the air to follow up on his attack, he was blasted by a bolt of lightning, courtesy of Eri, that started sending him higher once more. All Might endured the electricity and kicked the air behind to send him hurtling down towards Eri, traveling through the lighting. He cocked his arm back preparing to punch Eri as he got close, but before he could get the chance Kota rushed in and punched All Might in the face, knocking him back up into the air. Kota turned to Eri. You have to punch him. The lightning hurts him, but if we want to follow Izuku's plan we need to hit him. Eri was hesitant. She hadn't really hit people before. And she didn't like the idea of doing it either. But, if I don't hit him, Izuku and Kota will be. Eri's fist clenched with determination. She would save her friends. She wouldn't allow her weakness to hold them back. However, their hesitation gave All Might time to kick the air again and charge back down at them, punching Kota in the face and sending him hurtling down to the ground. Aoi! Eri watched her friend hurtle to the ground before, looking back at All Might. Hera! Eri charged at All Might, tackling him like Izuku did and forcing him higher and higher. All Might brought his hands together and was about to slam them into Eri's back like he did with Izuku, but then Eri unleashed her electricity and full power. Ahai! All Might clenched his teeth as blood started seeping from his mouth, as hundreds of thousands of volts through his body, and it felt like they were cooking his insides. After a few moments, All Might managed to power through the pain and slammed his fists down on Eri's back. The pain was immense. Eri felt a force that could crush mountains hit her spine directly, as the agony spread throughout her body. But even so, this pain is nothing. Eri didn't flinch, she didn't let go, she kept forcing All Might higher and higher. After all, the pain she felt now was nothing compared to dying over and over again, having your body ripped apart and put back together again at the hands of Overhaul. I won't let you hurt my friends. All Might brought his fist down on Eri's back, again and again, struggling as Eri kept pumping her electricity into him. But Eri powered through the pain, even as blood started coming out of her mouth, she kept going. After all, this amount of blood was nothing to her. The real issue, however, was her mana pool. Using this much power for this long was draining her power, and fast. Crap! This one's tougher than the other two. All Might thought. It was either thought that AKA was the most powerful of the Marvels or the weakest, depending on if that attack she used against Overhaul was exclusive to her. But All Might never would have guessed that the meek-looking girl that would cry if the press got too close to her, would be the one taking his attacks head-on. He brought his fist over his head once more, ready to exert the full power of One for All to try and release himself from her grip, when suddenly there was an arm around his neck, choking him from behind. "Sorry, All Might," Izuku said as he tried to strangle his idol. "But we need you to go down." Izuku started forcing electricity through All Might's body as well, doubling the damage, and hurting the hero even more. Meanwhile, All Might was struggling to breathe, not just because of Izuku strangling him, but also because the lack of air was now becoming apparent, as Izuku's plan finally started to work. All Might was still holding on though, as he reached around and grabbed Izuku's cape with one hand, and Eri's foot with the other, pulling both of them off of him. Then he slammed them both into each other at full strength, before letting them go and nailing them both with one punch, sending them to the ground. All Might then kicked the air behind him so he could go down and get some air. But he didn't get far, as Kota came up and punched him in the face again, sending him back up. "Oh no, you're not getting back down until we say you do," Kota shouted at the hero. All Might was struggling for air, and it was at this point he realized that he may not win this fight. Still, he kicked the little air there was around and charged at Kota, but Kota flew to the side and grabbed All Might's foot as he passed by. "My turn!" Kota shouted as he spun All Might around at rapid speeds, before throwing him higher into the air. All Might again kicked the air to try and force himself down, but Kota charged forward and punched him in the stomach, further depriving him of air. Kota punched All Might in the face, before dodging a sloppy swing from the symbol of peace. All Might found it hard to fight both Kota and the lack of air at the same time, and as black spots appeared in his vision, he knew he was losing both. Meanwhile, Kota was just laying on the hits, pounding on the hero's chest and face as much as he could, while dodging the sparse sloppy hits, coming from the air-deprived hero. As Kota cocked his arm back for another punch, he suddenly felt someone holding his arm back. He looked behind him and saw Izuku and Eri, Izuku being the one who was holding him back. "That's enough." Without any other words, Izuku flew to All Might and started pushing the hero back down to the ground. Crash! After about a minute, All Might's half-conscious body crashed into the ground, making an enormous crater, and kicking up tons of dirt into the air. When the dirt settled, All Might shakily pulled himself onto one knee, as he gasped for air. Slam! Izuku came down and slammed his fist down on All Might's head, forcing his head into the dirt. "I'm sorry." Slam slam slam. Izuku kept pounding on the struggling hero as he kept trying to just breathe. Eri and Kota slammed down next to Izuku, and they started wailing on All Might too, punching him all over as they just tried to take him down. Eventually steam started coming off of All Might's body, and he started to shrink. Izuku noticed this and stopped his attack. Guys, stop. Look." Kota and Eri stopped their punches, taking a moment to look at the smoking, shrinking symbol of peace. As the steam increased, they couldn't even see All Might anymore. And when the steam dissipated, they laid witness to the true All Might. A weak, skeleton-like man, struggling for breath as he started vomiting blood. What? Izuku took a step back in disbelief, all their eyes wide in shock. What the hell? Kota couldn't believe his eyes. The big, bulky, strong man that had been kicking his ass earlier was now this. The weakest man he'd ever seen that looked like he was about to die. Don't. All Might struggled to take in air through the blood coming out of his mouth. Don't let them see. All Might? Izuku didn't know what the heck was going on, and he was beyond confused. Was it a fake? That was the only thing Kota could think of to rationalize this. After a few moments, Izuku shook his head. No. That power was the real thing. This had to be the real All Might, but what is this? And maybe it's because of his quirk? Eri suggested. The other two looked at her to elaborate. Why, you said that all quirks have drawbacks, so maybe this is his drawback, and he was keeping it a secret. Eri speculated. Izuku thought about that for a moment. All that power he has. The drawback would have to be pretty huge. Kota finished his sentence. All Might hacked up some more blood, struggling to stay conscious. Izuku shook his head rapidly as he pulled himself out of his thoughts. We can think about this later. We need to get him to a hospital. No. All Might croaked out. No. Hospital, our recovery girl. Recovery girl? Izuku repeated. We don't know where that old broad is. Kota pointed out. And you need help fast. I know. All Might told them. I'll tell you where she is. The trio looked at each other. We don't have much time, Izuku told them, picking up All Might. Let's go. The other two nodded. Right. A few minutes later. The Marvels and All Might landed in the front yard, a small, unassuming house. Is this really where a hero lives? Kota wondered for a moment, before returning his attention to the matter at hand. Izuku flew down to the front door and started rapidly knocking on it with his super speed, while also trying not to break down the door. Eventually, they heard the sound of the door unlocking, and soon after it opened, revealing the small old lady that was Recovery Girl. Alright, Recovery Girl froze, when she saw the three Marvels, with a bloody beaten All Might in his true form. Get him inside. The three wasted no time and quickly entered Recovery Girl's house as she swiftly closed the door behind her. Recovery Girl's home was small. Humble. The living room they walked in only had a few things. A couch, a rug, a small table, and a TV. With a staircase off the right. Put him on the couch. Recovery Girl ordered as she left the room. Izuku nodded and laid All Might down on the couch, where he promptly lost consciousness. After about a minute, Recovery Girl came back, this time in her uniform, a mask, and a small table full of medical tools. Did anyone see him transform? She asked the trio in a very curt manner. Izuku shook his head. No. Good. Recovery Girl went over to All Might. Looks like he finally met his match. He should be grateful that at least his opponents did him the courtesy of not letting him bleed to death. I'll have to call in the special unit. For now, I'll do what I can. Izuku just looked at All Might, the defeated symbol of peace, with a very troubled expression. However, Kota and Eri were having another issue. Midori. Kota put his hand on Izuku's shoulder, to get his attention. We have to go. What? Now? Izuku didn't want to leave. Not until he knew All Might was okay. But after looking at the faces of his companions, he realized the issue they were having. They were running out of power. Izuku had expended himself the least during the fight, so it wasn't as bad for him, but the other two had used up quite a bit of their energy, and they needed to get home fast before they were kicked out of their transformation. He took one last look at All Might, before turning back to his friends. Okay. Let's go. And without another word, they zoomed out of Recovery Girl's house, and into the night sky. A minute later, at the mansion. The flight home had been swift, and luckily Kota and Eri had a bit more than enough energy to make it back. Shazam! Crockum! 3 bolts of lightning came down and turned them all back into their normal, child forms. Eri and Kota collapsed on the floor, now feeling extremely tired. While Izuku was a bit tired himself, he managed to remain standing. Before Kota could say anything, Eri latched onto him and hugged him while crying into his torso. Please don't go. Eri begged. Eh? Kota's tired eyes widened with shock. Eri never really liked to initiate contact, so her suddenly hugging him out of nowhere was a surprise. I thought you were gonna leave and not come back. Like my mama. Eri revealed as she cried. Well, having just thought All Might, Kota was fully sure that that one sentence hurt him more than any punch could. Feeling guilt stab him right in the heart, Kota winced, and thoroughly regretted storming off so quickly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just got upset. Please stop crying. Kota begged. I'm not leaving. Eri sniffled. Really? Yes. Really. Kota sighed. Eri's crying lessened a little, but she still continued to cry softly into his shirt. Figuring there was nothing he could do about that for now, Kota looked up at Izuku, who was just staring at the two of them. Kota sighed, as he realized that he'd have to confront the truth. Fine. You were right. And I should have waited. I'm sorry. Izuku shook his head. That doesn't matter. I'm just happy you're safe. TCH. Kota blushed slightly and looked away to try and hide it. I'm just surprised you would fight your idol. You were so sure we'd lose. I was. But when you two started fighting, I knew I had to find a way to win. Izuku pouted. Even if it was a fluke. Fluke. Kota looked back at Izuku, seeming slightly offended. No way. We won that fair and square. We only won because All Might didn't know we could breathe without air. If he knew that he wouldn't have let us take him up that high. Izuku speculated. We'd have lost. No doubt. Now wait a minute. Kota said, getting ready to argue. Stop. Eri shouted, once again surprising the two of them, forcing them to stop. No more fighting, please. Kota and Izuku looked at Eri, and then at each other, and soon came to a silent understanding. No more arguing. At least not tonight. I'm tired. Kota siget. Me too, Izuku said. Let's just got to bed. And so the children got into their beds and quickly fell asleep. Naomasa walked silently through the hospital. His expression was mostly unreadable, but anyone who knew him could see the worry in his eyes. After a few minutes of walking, he came up to room 516. The room All Might was located. He hesitated a bit. Naomasa was one of the very few people that was informed of All Might's defeat at the hands of the Marvels, and like everyone else who was told, he was shocked. What made him hesitant to go inside and check on his friend, was that he didn't know how bad of a state he was in. All he was told was that All Might had lost to the Marvels, and was recovering in a private hospital room inside the hero wing. That could mean a lot of things. His injuries could range from a few broken bones and bruises, to something more major. But, he steeled himself. He knew the anxiety of the unknown wouldn't resolve until he saw All Might himself. And so after taking a breath, he entered. When he got inside he was relieved to see that All Might was conscious. Sitting up in his bed and relatively okay, at least compared to the last time a villain sent him to the hospital. He was of course covered from head to toe in bandages and casts, as well as having a few things plugged into him. But of course, he was still well enough to smile when he saw his friend entering the room. Naomasa, good to see you. All Might's voice was a bit hoarse, most likely from how much he had to struggle to breathe through the lack of air and his own blood. I wish I could say the same. Naomasa put on a fake smile for his friend. I heard, you lost. All Might paused for a moment, his smiling falling before he turned his head to look down at his sheets. Yes, I did. Naomasa didn't say anything, because he knew he didn't need to. The questions he had were obvious. With the biggest one being, how? They were stronger than I anticipated. Especially Akka, faster too. I underestimated them. All Might explained. But that wasn't the reason I lost. I was still far stronger and quicker than they were. Was it their numbers? Naomasa knew that one of the most dangerous things about the Marvels was not just their power, but their numbers as well. God knows if there were 3 All Mights, they'd never need to worry about a single villain ever again. That was part of it, but there was another factor, I didn't know all of their abilities. All Might revealed. I managed to find Aoi by himself and I was handling him fairly easily. Well, maybe easily isn't the right word to use, it wasn't a hard fight but he still put up far more a fight than most I've fought. I was about to finish him off when the other 2 arrived. They kept throwing me up to higher and higher altitudes until I lost the ability to breathe. But they were seemingly unaffected by the lack of oxygen. So you're saying they either have some sort of ability that allows them to breathe in low oxygen environments, or they just don't need to breathe? Naomasa speculated. Exactly. All Might nodded. That could prove to be trouble. Naomasa gave off a nervous sweat. While the ability to not have to breathe wasn't flashy, it was definitely useful. It allowed for a person to make use of multiple different terrains like underwater, high in the sky, or in extremely hot places like volcanoes. It meant they didn't have to take in any enemy gas attacks, making quirks like Midnight's all but useless. And it made attacks revolving around strangulations or anything similar to it, completely useless. Especially if they are in league with Dash. They're not. All Might cut him off. Well, I can't say that for sure, but I'm very confident that they aren't. What makes you say that? Naomasa had a pretty good idea of what it was that reassured the hero that the vigilantes weren't in league all for one, but those were just assumptions, better to hear it from the man himself. Firstly, they made sure not to kill me. That was All Might's biggest piece of evidence. Aoi was relentlessly attacking me while I was suffocating, but Midori stopped him and brought me to the ground so I could breathe again, and when I started deflating into his form, he stopped the other 2. And they were also the ones to bring me to Recovery Girl, while also hiding my true form from the public. If they were minions of All for One, they wouldn't have done either of those things. He would never miss the opportunity to expose me or have me killed. True enough, Naomasa remarked. Also, I talked to Aoi for a bit before the fight. He didn't seem to work for All for One or even know who he was. At first, I thought it could have been acting, but given the fact that they spared my life, I'm more inclined to believe it wasn't. All Might explained. Aoi always has been the biggest piece of evidence against them working for All for One, so that makes sense, Naomasa said. Any way you look at it, if they were working for All for One as vigilantes to disrupt hero society or turn the public against heroes, it would be a good thing to gain the public's trust. Something Aoi seems to not care about in the slightest. Even Aka doesn't seem to care all too much about public approval. The only one acting in a way that would make sense if that theory was true is Midori. Also, none of them used the attack aka used against Overhaul, meaning that it's almost definitely not a teleportation ability and is most likely some form of an instant death attack. All Might theorized. Which again adds to the evidence that they're not working for All for One. Right, but of course then that does beg the question, how did they get their quirks? Naomasa asked. Pretty much everyone knew that the Marvel's abilities weren't natural. Not only were their powers far too varied for them to only have one quirk, but it was also way too strange for all three of them to have the exact same abilities, seemingly. Not to mention the absurd amount of power they had. Aoi said they weren't siblings. All Might recalled. Making it even stranger for them to have shared abilities. There is definitely a secret behind them, but for the time being, I don't think they themselves have malicious intentions. That doesn't mean we don't have to take them down, Naomasa said. Do you think you could beat them the next time around? Possibly. Their strategy implies they weren't confident about their chances in a straight-up brawl. And I have a better grasp of their abilities and strength. And I know if I can separate them and fight them individually, it's practically a guaranteed victory. All Might respond. Although there is still that light attack that was used against Overhaul. It's possible that they didn't use it because they had confidence in their plan. If they're really backed into a corner, they may use it again. That is the biggest issue when it comes to fighting them. Naomasa sighed. He really wished they knew more about that light attack. Of course it's not like I'll be fighting them anytime soon. All Might traced his fingers over his bandages. With these injuries, I'll be out about a week. And after that I'll need to start regular patrols, otherwise crime will start to rise and people will panic. It will probably be a while before I encounter them again. That means they'll be running around unchecked for a while. Naomasa pointed out. Maybe not. All Might thought. I think it's time I passed on One for All. A week and a half later, with the Marvels. Eri was concerned. After the fight with All Might and Izuku and Kota made up, she'd hoped for things to go back to normal. And while things with Kota seemed to be fine, the same could not be said for Izuku. On the surface, he still did what he normally did. Mostly watching the news, waiting for All Might to show up. He still ate with them and talked to them and everything, but his mood had overall dropped. At first, she just chalked it up to him being worried about All Might. Izuku had always displayed a love for him in particular, even buying a few pieces of merch with the money they had, much to Kota's chagrin. So seeing his favorite hero in such an injured state must have been stressful, to say the least. So when she saw on the news that All Might had returned and started his patrols again, she thought that Izuku would be happier, which he was. She recalled the relieved face and bright smile he had when he saw that broadcast. However, it didn't last. Even when they had returned to doing patrols again, he still seemed bothered. Right now, Eri and Kota were flying above the streets, watching Izuku from behind as he was flying an injured man to the hospital. I am surprised you're still coming with us, Eri told Kota. I thought you wouldn't. Well, it may be taking a while to find Muscular, but if I give up I'll never find him. Kota reasoned. And that's unacceptable. I just got too impatient. I'm sorry I made you worry. It's fine. Eri quickly reassured him, not wanting him to feel bad on her behalf. It's just, I'm happy. Kota's lips twitched upwards, as he suppressed the urge to smile. Whatever. Eri looked at Izuku, as they reached the hospital and he brought the injured man inside. Izuku's upset. Kota nodded. He's probably still upset about having to fight All Might. There was a small hint of guilt in Kota's voice. In all honesty, he did feel bad for not only endangering his friends by being reckless, but he also forced Izuku to fight his idol. He's too himself to us about it, he probably thinks we don't notice. Kota sighed. The only way to fix this is to talk to him about it. Will that help? Eri wasn't a big fan of confrontation. Which is why she had yet to ask Izuku himself about what was bothering him. Only one way to find out. Kota shrugged. Just a moment later, Izuku zoomed over to them. Alright, he's being taken care of. Let's dash. Izuku. We know something's been bothering you. Kota said bluntly. Izuku was likely to deny it if they tried to use subtlety, so the best route was to be very direct. Spill it. What? Guys, I'm dash. Izuku stopped when he saw the looks on his friends' faces. Kota was not at all buying it, giving him a very unimpressed glare, while Eri also wasn't buying it. She looked more openly concerned. Seeing no real way to deny it, Izuku slumped over and sighed. It's just, I can't believe I hurt All Might. All Might. He saved so many people and I had tried to choke him. Izuku started muttering about how terrible he felt, going on and on while Eri and Kota thought about what to do. However, before they could, Izuku came up with a solution first. I have to apologize. That's stupid, Kota said immediately. He'd try to fight us. I know, but what if I apologized in my normal form, instead of this one? Izuku proposed. He won't know it's me, so he won't try to fight me. It's perfect. But if he doesn't know it's you, then he won't even know what you're apologizing for. Kota pointed out. And if you're too obvious about it, he might figure out who you are. No way. No one would think that a quickness kid is secretly Marvel Midori. And I won't be that obvious anyway. Izuku didn't seem like he was gonna budge on this. Plus, I just have to. I'm not gonna feel better until I do. I'm sorry if it feels like I'm being selfish, I'll do it by myself, but I need to do it. Eri and Kota looked at each other and after a few moments, they wordlessly came to a conclusion. You're not going alone. If something happens and you need to fight All Might, then we need to be there to help. Kota rationalize it. Don't do what I did. If you're gonna do something stupid, then don't do it alone. Eri nodded. Don't leave us. Izuku was taken aback by this support. He had expected Kota to want nothing to do this, and for Eri to be too shy to want to join him as well. So for both of them to give him their support so easily, it was making him tear up a bit. Thanks, guys. Izuku wiped away the few tears that came out of his eyes. You're the best. TCH, whatever. Kota crossed his arms. The only reason he wasn't arguing more with this was because it was pretty much his fault, and so by doing this it wouldn't just absolve Izuku's guilt, but his own. Even if he thought it was stupid. Alright. The first step is to sneak into UA. Izuku said. What? That took Kota off guard. Are you insane? Don't worry. We'll just move so fast that no one can see us enter, hide away behind some trees or something, we transform back, and we find All Might. Izuku explained his terrible plan with a huge smile on his face like it was some kind of genius scheme. There are so many problems with that plan. Kota pointed out. The wisdom of Solomon informed Izuku of all the holes and flaws with his plan the moment he thought it up. Chances are they would get spotted in their child forms and kicked out before they could find All Might. But it was the best chance they had. All Might wasn't hard to find, but you'd be hard-pressed to keep him in one location long enough to speak to him, so just going around in their child forms hoping to find All Might and talk to him would take a long, long time. And obviously, they couldn't go to him in their champion forms because he would attack them. So this was the best he had. We don't have any other option, so this is the best plan we have. And even if it fails and we get found out, I can just say that I have a teleportation quirk and accidentally teleported from my house to U.A. Izuku explained. Then when they look away, we'll sneak off, transform, and leave. Kota thought about it for a minute. The best part about their secret identity was that it was easy to keep a secret. No one would believe that the Marvels were a bunch of kids, so they would pretty much have to let people find out about who they were in order for them to figure it out. And everything else Izuku said was plausible. Fine. Kota sige. But if something goes wrong, it's your fault. Izuku nodded, before turning to Eri. What do you think, Eri? Well, I'll do it, Eri answered simply. She didn't like the idea of sneaking around a place full of people that wanted to arrest them, but she trusted Kota and Izuku. If they said it was okay, then she would do it. Alright. Let's do it tomorrow so we'll have all of our power in case we need it. Izuku told them. Now, back to patrol. And with that Izuku sped off, with Eri and Kota following behind him. The next day. After a long night's rest and a somewhat decent breakfast, the trio transformed and took to the sky, intent on going with Izuku's plan to apologize to All Might. That was until Izuku got distracted. Look! Look! Guys! It's the USJ facility. Izuku pointed at a building below them, stopping them all so they could get a better look at it. And what the heck is a USJ? Kota almost regretted asking because he already knew it had to be some kind of hero-related thing for Izuku to be this interested in it. It's a place where UA trains their students. It has all sorts of cool environments and things to help teach the future heroes how to fight villains and save people. Izuku explained. It's so cool. I wish I could see the inside. Kota Fachapalmed. Focus Midori. We didn't come to go sightseeing, we came so you could apologize to All Might and stop being so freaking sad to look at. Is that a student? Eri pointed down, and both Izuku and Kota looked to see that there was indeed a student, running away from the USJ at speeds only a quirk could make possible. I think it is either that or a short pro, Kota commented. Why is he running away? Izuku knew that hero students normally couldn't use their quirks in public, so, what was happening? Being ever the curious one, Izuku zoomed down to investigate. The green-clad marvel flew right in front of the student, who appeared to be wearing what looked like a suit of armor. The student's eyes widened under his helmet, and he slowly came to a stop, until he halted right in front of Izuku. "Hey Marvel," the student said. "Hi there." Izuku greeted him with a friendly smile. "What's dash? Please. Save my classmates," the student begged. "Huh?" Izuku was taken aback by the sudden request. "My classmates are under attack by a large group of villains, who appeared in the USJ via a villain with a portal quirk," the boy explained. "My classmates managed to stall the villains long enough for me to flee to get help. I was planning to go to the teachers, but I was fortunate to run into you. While I do not normally approve of vigilantes, I beg of you, please save my classmates." "What's going on?" Kota and Eri came down, flying slightly above the boy and looking at Izuku. "Some UA students are being attacked by villains at the USJ." Izuku explained to them, seeing his two partners' eyes widen. "We have to help them." "Ugh. Villains are so annoying." "Fine, I'll kick their shit in and save some wannabe heroes." Kota groaned angrily. "Language." Izuku turned to the boy. "You should go and get the teachers, we'll take care of the villains." "Thank you." And with that the boy wasted no more time, firing up his quirk, which appeared to be engines in his legs, and speeding off towards UA's main building. The three marvels looked at the USJ building, Izuku zoomed in, followed by Kota and then Eri. Little did they know the fight ahead of them would be their hardest one yet. Aizawa was not having a good day. First All Might had to cancel on the USJ lesson, that idiot used too much of his time and now he wouldn't be able to last a full lesson in his buff form. So it was just him and 13. Then villains attacked. Not just a few villains, a literal army of villains. All being led by some guy with hands all over him with a villain who could make portals at his side. So after sending his class away and doing quite an impressive job of taking the vast majority of the villains, there were only two left. The leader, and his giant black bird man thing that apparently was called Nomu. The Nomu thing was rather strange. It had a completely exposed brain, and he could see that parts of him were seemingly cybernetic, some metal poking out of his arms and its pine seemingly being covered with it. The leader actually wasn't too difficult to deal with, he had a close call with his quirk destroying some of the skin on his elbow, but other than that it would have been a fairly simple takedown. Until Nomu came in. He didn't even see it move, and it pinned him down with so much strength that he didn't have even a hope of escaping it. If he had to compare the creature to anything, the only person that would come to mind would be All Might himself. Of course, he tried to erase its quirk but that didn't work, telling him that whatever quirk this monster had it was a mutation quirk. Not that that would help him with his current situation, pinned down on the floor with Nomu completely restraining him. "Nomu, kill him slowly," the leader ordered, sending a chill down Eraserhead's spine. "Shit." Aizawa grit his teeth so as not to scream out in pain, when Nomu started pressing down on his body, his massive hands quickly starting to break the teacher/hero's bones. "Fuck, this is how I'm gonna die." Aizawa could see his life flash before his eyes. "Yamada, I'm sorry. You're the only one left." However, before Aizawa could finish accepting his death, a booming voice filled the area. "Hey! Knock it off, you oversized crow." Shigaraki paused and looked up at the source of the voice. There he saw Marvel Aoi, flying above the fountain, slowly descending until he landed about a dozen feet away from Aizawa and the Nomu. "Ah, Marvel Aoi, Nomu, stop crushing that mini-boss. Attack Aoi," Tamura ordered. Kota rolled his eyes and Nomu released Aizawa. "Yeah, that'll go well for you. Why don't you just give up now and dash?" Wham! Thanks to Kota letting his guard down, he was not prepared for the Nomu to charge at him at speeds comparable to All Might, and hit him without about the same strength, right in the face. Kota went flying back, getting sent through the fountain, destroying it completely, and still going a few feet back until Kota stopped himself mid-air. "Shit." Kota whipped some blood from his nose. "Alright. Guess this is happening." The two charged at each other, their fist cocked and ready to battle. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Momo, Jiro, and Kaminari were facing off against a still large group of villains. They had taken out a lot of them using a combination of their powers, but there were just so many of them. Can't you just zap them all lightning dolt? Jiro asked Kaminari. That's not how electricity works. If I zap them then I'll zap you too. Kaminari argued. Crockum. Suddenly, from above them, a torrent of lightning bolts crashed down onto the villains, smoking them instantly and leaving them all to fall onto the floor unconscious. The three students stood there in shock, staring at the dozens of now unconscious villains. Eventually, Jiro turned to head to Kaminari. So what was that about electricity? Are you okay? The three students looked up and saw Eri flying down towards them, with a concerned expression. Marvel Aka. Momo gasped. You see. It was a marvel. Their powers don't make any sense. Kaminari said, defending his argument. What are you, why are you here? Jiro asked, wondering how the vigilante could have known about the attack. We saw this guy, with armor, running away. He said you were in trouble. Eri explained while fiddling with her cape in a nervous fashion. That must have been Ida, Momo said, immediately recognizing the description of her classmate's hero costume. They must have found a way to get him out so he could get to UA and ask for help. And ran into the marvels on the way. Kaminari said cheerily. Nice. We're saved. SSO, why you're not hurt? Eri asked. Oh. No. We're fine. Please go help our other classmates. Momo told her. Ok. Eri quickly sped away, leaving a gust of wind behind her as she went off the next area. You think everyone else is okay? Jiro asked Momo. They should be. We may not have known them for very long. But if they made it to U.A, they can hold out against these lackluster villains. Momo told her friends, and herself. And besides, Marvel Aka is never alone. Either Marvel Midori or Marvel Aoi is here with her, or both. Everyone should already be safe. Momo said that, but for whatever reason, she couldn't rid herself of an ominous feeling. Elsewhere. We're Honadi. We're Honadi. We're Honadi. You're really not helping Mineta, Azui told her sobbing classmate as she tried her hardest to keep them both alive. After getting sent to the flood zone by the mist villains, Azui quickly got them both on the rescue boat that was floating in the area. The villains had surprisingly not tried to make it on the boat, but that didn't keep them safe for long, as one villain with the ability to manipulate water, made a giant watery hand and cleaved the boat in half. After that Azui had been hopping from one piece of destroyed boat to the other like they were lily pads, with Mineta tucked under her arm, and while the villains kept destroying more the floating chunks of the boat she had left. Azui may have seemed calm, but internally she was panicking just as much as Mineta, okay maybe not that much, but she was still freaking out. She knew soon enough they would have to enter the water, and with this many villains whose quirks all seemed tailored to this kind of situation, she knew that they wouldn't last much longer. However, it seems that would happen sooner than she thought. As she leaped for another piece of the wreckage, suddenly it was knocked out of the way, and a villain with a shark head popped up, with his jaws opened. Azui's eyes widened in fear, as now she was suddenly on a collision course with death. All she could do is close her eyes. And then, swoosh! Phew! That was close. Azui opened her eyes, and found herself floating, a good few feet above the water. Izuku had come in and swooped Azui and Mineta away from an untimely death, and was holding them both in his arms. Marvel Midori. Mineta was still crying, but now they were tears of joy. We're saved. Thank you, Uo. Meanwhile, the villains were all looking up in a mix of shock and fear, and the shark villain said, oh sure dash. Zap. After electrifying the water, the villains were left floating and unconscious, and smoking. Haha. Take that, you bastards. Zap. Mineta cheered. Language, Izuku scolded him. Yes sir, Mineta said swiftly. Heroes shouldn't swear, Izuku told them as he flew them away from the shipwreck zone and towards the plaza. As Izuku flew over the plaza, he noticed Aizawa down on the floor, and Kota getting his ass kicked by the Nomu. Thwack. Ah. Izuku had to move aside as Kota got punched through the ceiling. Aoi! Izuku called out. What the hell is that thing? Mineta shouted out in pure fear. It's keeping up with a marvel. There was a slight tremble in Azui's voice. She knew the kind of power the marvels possessed. And for a villain to be keeping up with one of them, let alone seemingly beating one. Izuku swiftly turned his attention towards the Nomu. This thing. It looks unnatural. It must be strong if it managed to hit Kota like that. First I have to get these two away from it though. Meanwhile, in the distance, Tamura and Kurogiri looked at Izuku flying above them. Looks like Midori came to play. And he brought guests. Nomu, kill them too. The Nomu jumped at Izuku, at once again truly terrifying speeds. Fast. By the time Izuku finished that thought, Nomu was only a foot away from him with its hand outstretched and ready to grab Izuku's head. Blam. Fortunately, Kota came back down and slammed right into the monster before it could reach Izuku, forcing it into the ground. The impact creating a massive dust cloud, forcing Izuku to shield his eyes so as to not get debris in them, with Mineta and Azui doing the same. When they looked back they saw Kota flying above the ground, his face slightly bloodied but that didn't do much to hide his obvious rage. And the Nomu was half buried into the ground with its lower half sticking out. Ah! Eat it, asshole! Kota shouted at the half-buried beast. However, his celebration didn't last long, as concrete around the Nomu began to crack and shift, meaning that it wouldn't be buried for very long. Grr! Is Midori? Put those idiots down and help me! Kota shouted out to his friend. Izuku wanted to scold him for calling two people they've never met idiots, but he knew now was not the time. With Nomu quickly pulling itself out of the ground, Izuku wasted no time landing and setting both Azui and Mineta down behind him. You two get away from here. We'll take care of this cyborg monster thing. Yes sir. Mineta gladly started running the other way, with Azui following suit. Pay attention Midori! Kota shouted at him. Izuku turned around and saw Nomu now completely unearthed and ready to go, and it quickly charged at them. The two Marvel did the same and flew towards it, both of them barely dodging a sloppy right hook, and retaliating with two punches, one from Kota to the face and one from Izuku to the stomach. Both of them did absolutely nothing, and Nomu was not fazed in the slightest. What? Izuku shouted out in shock. Not even All Might could take our punches like that. Damn it. Kota shote. Nomu reacted quickly and grabbed the two their heads, lifting them up and slamming their heads together. Ah! The two shouted out in pain before Nomu threw both of them away. The two tumbled a bit, before eventually recovering and stopping themselves using their flight. Damn it. This fucking thing has something called shock absorption. That guy covered in hands over there told me it lets him absorb all our punches. Kota revealed. Well, why didn't you say that sooner? Izuku asked him, slightly upset that he didn't share this vital information with him. Well, I didn't much look out. Kota shote. The Nomu charged at them, with its hands out to grab them both, and the two Marvels managed to dodge just in time, flying in opposite directions away from the beast. Nomu looked in both directions, but it didn't move. It just kept moving its head from one side to the other, looking at Kota and then at Izuku. Izuku squinted at the sight of his unmoving opponent. Is it trying to figure out which one of us to go for? Unfortunately, Kota did not take the time to notice this and shot a lightning bolt at the cyborg. The lightning hit Nomu's massive chest. However, instead of injuring it, the bolt just seemed to get absorbed inside of the Nomu. Suddenly its mechanical parts glowed blue for a few seconds before its muscles started to swell slightly. I wouldn't try that if I were you. This thing not only has one type of shock absorption but two. Tamura laughed maniacally. You can throw all the lightning you want at it. That will only make it stronger. Wait. That means this thing has more than one quirk. Izuku realized, his mouth open in shock. Actually, with two kinds of shock absorption, and its insane power. It must have at least 3 quirks. So close. This Nomu has been loaded up with far more than 3 quirks. And you haven't even seen everything it can do. Tamura monologues. This Nomu was designed with the sole purpose of killing All Might, and all 3 Marvels. It's the anti-symbol of peace. The bringer of despair. The dash. Crocum. As the hand-covered villain was speaking, Kota shot out a bolt of lightning his way, only for Nomu to jump in the way and take the blast of electricity, absorbing it and growing more powerful and bulky. Will you, shut up already? Kota shouted at the villain. Kota, stop. You're only making it more powerful. Izuku shouted out. Well, if you're gonna be rude. Nomu, kill them. Now. Tamura ordered once more. However, the Nomu didn't move from its spot, rather it started looking side to side like it did before. Trying to decide which one to go for, but lacking the mental capacity to actually make a decision. Kota was about to charge at the Nomu to deliver yet another pointless attack, but Izuku shot a lightning bolt in front of Kota, forcing him to stop and look at his green-suited friend. Hey! Aoi! That won't work. Izuku pointed out. Stop and look at what it's doing. Kota still looked pissed, but he did what he was told and stared at Nomu for a few seconds. It's just, standing there moving its head like an idiot, actually dash. Why the hell aren't you attacking? Shigaraki asked, moving his arms around like he was throwing a tantrum. Sir, you told it to go after the two marvels. It appears that since they are no longer right next to each other, it is having a hard time picking which one to attack. Kurogiri explained to his man-child boss. I don't care. Choose one. Tamura ordered, seeming just childish as Kota despite being over twice his age. The Nomu let out some confused noises and stopped moving its head. Now just being frozen in place seemingly. Sir, it literally does not have the mental capability to choose anything. Kurogiri pointed out. Interesting. It's like it doesn't have a will of its own. It's like it's a robot. Just doing what it's told. Izuku thought. Guys? Izuku and Kota looked behind them, and saw Eri flying over towards them, landing next to Kota and looking at his bloodied face with fear. What happened? Why are you bleeding? Eri, understandably, started freaking out. Not much was capable of harming them, so seeing her friends hurt was not only horrifying but also shocking. That thing. Kota pointed at the Nomu. That thing happened. It can absorb our lightning and our punches. Izuku quickly explained. But it's mindless. And it's not very smart. It can't decide which one of us to attack. Yeah. Some anti-symbol of peace you got there. Kota moket. You know what? Focus on Aoi. Kill the other two if they get in your way. Tamura ordered, being more specific. And then the Nomu moved. Fuck. Was all Kota had time to say before he had to duck a punch to the face. Eri grabbed Kota and flew up and back, trying to get away from Nomu, but Nomu just got ready to lunge at them. Izuku saw Kota get ready to blast it with lightning. Aoi, stop. You're just gonna make it stronger. What else do you want me to do? Kota flew up, barely managing to avoid Nomu's lunge. We have two things. We punch people. And we shoot them with lightning. And this thing is immune to both of them. Gah! Izuku grit his teeth as he watched Nomu jump up and grab Kota's leg, before slamming it down into the ground, and then doing it again, and again, and again. He wanted to charge in and help, but he knew there really wasn't anything he could do. It was made to destroy us. It's immune to punches and lightning. Think, Izuku. What can you do? Eri charged down and grabbed Nomu's hand, and with all her strength she barely managed to lift two of its fingers off Kota's leg, allowing Kota to break free and fly away. However, Nomu used its other arm and backhanded Eri away. Wait. If they made this thing to destroy us, then they could only make it immune to the powers they know about. Izuku realized. Aoi. Use your quirk. What ga? Kota got distracted by Izuku, allowing Nomu to charge at him, and get on top of him, using one of his massive hands to keep Kota pinned to the ground, and its other hand to start punching Kota in the face. Each hit feeling like a sledgehammer to the face of his child form, each punch further bloodying his already slightly messed up face. Why? You've never used your quirk in this form before. So they wouldn't have known to make a counter to it. Izuku explained. I always thought that maybe our powers would boost your quirks. You have to try it now. Ah. Fuck it. Kota raised his hand and pointed it at Nomu's massive bird-like face. Swoosh. A massive torrent of water burst out of Kota's hand and completely engulfed Nomu's upper body. What? Water? Tamura shouted out, anger once again filling his voice. Since when could they do that? The high-pressure blast of water flew through the roof of the USJ building, looking like a waterspout had formed in the center of the building. When the attack stopped, and the water was gone, Kota could see the effect it had on the Nomu. Or rather, what was left of it. Kota's attack had completely destroyed the creature's upper half, leaving only its legs and a bit of its lower waist behind, as a bleeding stump. Ashurishit. Kota coughed, caked in blood was an expression of pure shock. And he wasn't the only one. Ah! Eri screamed and flew back a bit, covering her mouth with her hands and looking at the remains of the Nomu in pure horror. No. No. Not again. So it did enhance their quirks. Izuku was probably the least shocked out of everyone, having theorized about this and somewhat expecting an outcome like this. Although the effectiveness of the attack did stun him just a bit. Heh. He. So, you had a special attack hidden away all this time. Tamura started scratching his neck. Not that it matters. Because Nomu had something you didn't know about either. Then, suddenly, Nomu's stump began to pulsate, and then, to grow. All three marvels looked on in horror, as the Nomu grew back, its entire upper body until it was back to full health. Including its metal parts. That's impossible, Izuku said in pure disbelief. No regeneration quirk in existence should let it grow back so much of its body. And definitely shouldn't have been able to grow back its head like that. And the metal parts, how the hell dash? Behold its hyper-speed regeneration. The culmination of so many different regeneration quirks all at once. So long as any part of it remains, it can regenerate its entire body. Tamura gloated as if he personally had anything to be proud of. Even its cybernetic augmentations. Thanks to the revolutionary work of our good doctors. I told you before, didn't I? It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to die. Kota grit his teeth and flew backward, and Nomu gave chase, coming at him with his fist extended. The blue-suited marvel unleashed another torrent of water that engulfed Nomu's arm. However, Nomu was too fast, and the remains of Nomu's mostly destroyed arms hit Kota right in the chest, knocking him back. The Nomu quickly regenerated its arm and charged after Kota. Kota saw the behemoth coming at him, and did the only thing he could do, shooting another blast of water, this time at its legs. The Nomu tumbled as its legs were taken out from under it, and reduced to bloody stumps by the water pressure. However, they knew it wouldn't take long for it to grow them back. Now with no more options available, Izuku knew it was time for their last resort. He flew over to Eri, who was flying a foot above the ground, frozen in terror, and unsure of what to do. "Aka, we need you to erase it." What? Eri backed away slightly, looking even more fearful somehow. "AKA, we can't beat it," Izuku told her. "Kota can only hold it off for so long. It's not alive. It's mindless. You won't be killing it because something that isn't alive can't be killed. Just think of it like crushing a rock. You're not hurting anything." Eri looked hesitantly at Izuku, before looking at Kota and Nomu. Kota was doing his best to take down the Nomu, blasting off parts of it with water, but the Nomu just kept growing it back and going after Kota. "Eri, please." Izuku reimagined her attention. "We only have so much power. If Kota runs out and turns back to normal, he'll die. And then we'll die. Unless you erase it. Please." Eri started hyperventilating a bit, and Izuku held her shoulders to try and comfort her. "Please Eri. We need you." She looked at the Nomu. At the monster she was being told to kill. Izuku had made it all so clear. She knew what she had to do. Eri looked back at Izuku and nodded. With tears in her eyes. "All right." Izuku turned towards Kota. "Aoi. Take out its legs again." "On it." Kota blasted Nomu's legs out again, forcing its body to tumble to the ground. "AKA. Now." Izuku ordered. Eri took a deep breath and tried to activate her quirk. Her horn started to grow, and bolts of energy started coming off of her. Zoom. She charged at the Nomu at max speed. But strangely enough, when she started getting close to the Nomu, it seemed like time came to a crawl. When she was only a few feet away, she reached out her hand to touch it, and erase this monster from existence. "Eri!" As she got close, the bird-like face of the Nomu shifted, turning into Overhaul's masked face. "Eri! Eri, you cursed child! Murderer! You killed me!" Eri's eyes shrank in fear, as she could hear Overhaul's voice shout at her. "You cursed child! You killer! Killer!" Suddenly her own mother's voice joined in, as flashes of her appeared in her mind. "Killer! Killer! 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 Eri!" Eri's hand touched Nomu's chest. And nothing happened. Suddenly Eri snapped back to reality, confused as to what just happened and why Nomu was seemingly unaffected by her quirk. Until she realized, her quirk wasn't on. Nomu quickly punched her away, shooting her into the air and almost going through the ceiling, before Izuku caught her. "Eri! Eri, what happened?" Izuku was so scared and confused that he completely forgot to call her by her vigilante name. "Can't?" Eri was hyperventilating, a lot. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Izuku could tell that Eri would be out of the battle, at least of a bit. She was completely unresponsive. Just crying and saying "I'm sorry" over and over again. Meanwhile down below, Kota wasn't doing so great. After learning about his quirk's new power enhancement, he had been able to reliably keep Nomu away from him, but he couldn't do this forever. He could feel his mana pool draining. He was already over halfway down. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before he ran out of power. And that would be the end of him. And so for once, he used some of that wisdom of Solomon. We have to run. Kota said after giving Nomu another blast of pressured water to keep it back. We can't beat this thing. I know. Izuku shouted back. But if we run, then everyone else dies. Kota growled. On one hand, he didn't want to die. On the other, he didn't want other people to die in his place. And he didn't know which part of him was winning out. And we won't have to. Izuku shouted at him. Help is on the way. And then, right on cue, the doors of the USJ burst open. Fear not. For I am here. The moment All Might walked into the USJ he was concerned. Firstly, he saw villains and the Marvels still here. That was concerning because according to Ida, he ran into the Marvels a few minutes ago, and adding in the time it took for him to get here, he would have expected for the villains to have been defeated, and for the Marvels to have left already. Secondly, the Marvels looked like they were actually struggling against this big, cyborg brain villain. In other words, he'd need to employ caution. Finally. All Might. Tamura smirked underneath the hand on his face. I'm so glad you're finally here. I was hoping you'd show up a bit later when the Marvels were already dead, so that way I could devote my full attention to watching you die. But watching you all struggle against my Nomu, only to fall in the end, is also a satisfying enough conclusion. Nomu, kill All Might and the Marvels. But focus on All Might. The Nomu turned his head towards All Might and dashed towards him. Fast. All Might was alarmed at just how fast the Nomu was, around his own speed. He saw the monster charging at him with its fist cocked back to punch him, so All Might did what he does best. He pulled his fist back and got ready to punch it. Their fists met, and there was an explosion of force and wind that filled the entire area around, sweeping everything away like a hurricane. Gah! Tamura was also swept back by this wind and had to stay farther away from the fight to make sure he didn't get knocked off his feet. All Might looked at the perfectly intact Nomu with shock. This thing just took one of my punches. Now fully aware of the threat, he threw aside any notion of holding back and unleashed a flurry of punches at Nomu. Which did nothing. All Might's punches hit Nomu dead in the chest, but the artificial creation just ate them without even flinching, before returning its own volley of punches. Gah! All Might had to dig his feet into the ground to prevent himself from getting knocked away, from the sheer force of Nomu's powerful blows. Crap! It's as strong as it is tough. Shit! Aoi, get him off All Might! Izuku ordered. Ack! He better not try to fight us too. Kota complained but still complied, flying over to the Nomu's left, before unleashing another torrent of water at the Nomu, blasting it away and damaging its body quite a bit. Since when could he do that? All Might thought in shock, before shaking his head to refocus himself. No, I can ask those questions later, right now I need to focus on the... All Might's train of thought stopped when he looked at what remained of Nomu's body once Kota finished blasting it. Most of its skin had been blasted off as well as some muscle, so the bone was exposed in places, and there was a massive hole going all the way through its chest. And then he saw it start regenerating. That won't stop it for long, Kota growled. Trust me. Izuku quickly zoomed over to All Might's side. All Might. That thing has multiple quirks. It has a shock absorption quirk, and electricity absorption quirk, and super strength, speed, and regeneration. Its actual durability doesn't seem to hold up against attacks that aren't pure force, and it seems to be mindless and only functions off of that hand guy's orders. He said it was created to kill you and us. That's right, All Might, this Nomu is the perfect thing created to kill you and those flying pests. It's the anti-symbol of peace. Tamura set off on the side, laughing dramatically. Alright, that was a lot to take in. All Might felt a cold sweat go down his neck when he heard it had multiple quirks, but he could worry about that later. Right now he needed to focus on the battle. He heard crying and muttering, and looked up in the distance to see Eri still having a mental breakdown. What happened to her? Izuku looked up at Eri. We tried to get her to erase the Nomu, but she's still not over the last time she erased something. Which fucking sucks because I really wish we could just turn this thing to nothing. Kota shouted in frustration. Couldn't you just blast the thing with water until it dies? All Might asked Kota. Kota rolled his eyes. Geez. Why didn't I try that? Oh, wait, I did. It regenerates too fucking fast. I'd have to blast that thing for fucking minutes straight at full power, but I don't have enough power left. I already used up half my fucking power supply holding it off. As the Nomu started to finish up its regeneration process and began to rise, All Might began to take in the situation. There was an opponent who was perfectly built to take all of his attacks and dish them back. Marvel Aka was freaking the hell out and didn't seem like she was gonna be of much help for a while. Marvel Midori didn't seem to know what to do, and Marvel Aoi could damage it, but apparently, the Marvels had a power limit and he had used about half of his. With the Nomu now back to full capacity, and coming towards him, All Might knew what he had to do. Go beyond. He charged forward and met the Nomu halfway. And the punch-off began. The Nomu and All Might punched each other rapidly, both of them unleashing dozens of punches per second at each other. All with enough power to send those same hurricane-like winds out all around them. Didn't you hear? He was made to take all of your punches, even at 100%. Tamura laughed as he guarded his face against the winds. Aoi! Help him out. Izuku once again ordered. TCH. Kota got ready to unleash another water blast, but All Might stopped him. No. Don't intervene. All Might told him. If this thing wants a brawl, then I'll give it one. If it was built to take my punches at 100% dash. All Might dug his feet into the ground, and Nomu started moving backward and recoiling as the hero's punches started to affect it. Then I'll have to punch it, at beyond 100%. All Might shouted. His muscles were screaming, and what's left of his insides were on fire, but he kept on going. Giving more than everything he had and laying into the Nomu. Eventually, he punched it hard enough to send it flying back, and he chased after it and continued laying on the beating. Whoa! Izuku looked on in awe, as his hero unleashed fisticuff hell on the Nomu, and their fight raged all around the plaza, breaking apart the ground, and the trees and whatever else was around, as the two titans duked it out. Izuku wanted to indulge in his fanboying so hard right now, to be confident that All Might would beat this thing through pure power, despite the obvious work that had gone into making sure that would be impossible. But the smart side of him couldn't help but notice the excessive amount of blood coming from the hero's mouth. Even though All Might could now hurt Nomu, Nomu seemed to be hurting him a lot more. Each punch Nomu gave wasn't softened by shock absorption or healed by regeneration. He took all those raw, and they hurt like hell. And that wasn't even mentioning all the blows he took to his weak spot. Those made him feel like he was gonna die each time the Nomu hit it, and the Nomu was hitting it every other second. It wasn't the one-sided slaughterfest like Tamura wanted, but the battle was still in Nomu's favor. And it was all their fault. We powered up the Nomu by blasting it with lighting. If we didn't do that, then All Might have been able to overpower it. Izuku thought. Think Izuku. I have to find a way to help. But we can't punch hard enough to overpower its shock absorption, and we can't shoot lightning because of its weight. All quirks have limits. The shock absorption could only absorb so much, so maybe its electricity absorption has the same weakness and the electricity will cause it to explode or something. Aoi! We have to shoot it with lightning. Izuku turned to Kota, who looked at him wide-eyed. What? Midori, this thing is immune to lightning. Kota pointed out. No, it's absorbing it. Just like it was absorbing the shock from our punches. And just like All Might can overpower its shock absorption, maybe we can overpower its lightning absorption. Izuku explained. Kota thought about it for a moment, before realizing that he had a point. But still, that thing gets stronger the more we zap it. And I'm already at half power. I know, that's why we have to hit it hard and fast. And we have to hit it dash. Izuku looked up at Eri. Together. So that means we have to get Eri to get her shit together. Kota Sigit. Alright, let's do this before All Might dies on us. With their course of action decided, they quickly zoomed over to Eri, who was still crying in the air. Eri! Eri, come on, we need you to snap out of it. Izuku shouted at her, grabbing onto her shoulders and shaking her around. Eri, come on, we're all gonna die. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Eri just kept sobbing, stuck in a trauma-induced trance. Izuku's words fell deaf on her ears. Seeing that none of this was working, and time was running out, Kota did something he knew he was going to regret later. Slap. Eri recoiled back, as Kota's hand slapped her across the face, so hard that it left a red mark on her cheek. Kota, what the heck? Izuku turned to the blue marvel angrily. We don't have time for this shit. We need her to wake the fuck up. Kota arguet. What? Eri didn't know what just happened. One moment everything was so hazy, and the next, she felt a stinging pain in her right-left cheek. What happened? Ack. Izuku decided he could scold Kota about this later. Right now he had to tell Eri the plan. Eri! All Might came in and is fighting Nomu, but he's losing. We have to shoot it with as much electricity as we can, and it might explode. But we need to do it together, or we're all gonna die. Oh okay, Eri answered as quickly as she could. Alright, Izuku said, as all three marvels turned their attention towards All Might and the Nomu, still exchanging blows across the plaza. First we're gonna need to get it to be still. Koaoi, blast it with water again. Give me a few seconds to talk to All Might. Got it. Kota flew forward towards All Might and Nomu's fight, and as he flew in overhead, he blasted Nomu's head with another pressurized blast of water, destroying it entirely, and sending his limp body to the ground for a moment. Izuku then quickly zipped next to All Might with Eri following in behind him. We're going to overload its electricity absorption power. If we do that, there is a chance that it might just explode. But to do that we need you to make sure this thing stands still while we do it. It's gonna get stronger the more electricity we pump into it, but we have to do this. All Might looked at the quickly regenerating Nomu. Really the only way he could make sure this thing stayed down is if there wasn't anything left for it to grow back from. Which was what Izuku's plan was. It wouldn't be easy, but it's what he had to do. Alright. Consider it done. Just as the Nomu's head finished regenerating, All Might dashed right at it and grabbed its right arm, and brought it behind it, and then he grabbed the Nomu's other arm and brought that behind it too until he had the Nomu in a lock. Nomu struggled a bit, and All Might also struggled to keep Nomu in place, but he was barely able to do it. Alright. Marvels. Attack. Izuku shouted. He, Kota, and Eri all charged up lighting in their hands, before bringing them forward, and shooting it out at the Nomu at max power. The Nomu's body absorbed the electricity, its metallic parts glowing blue, as its muscles increase in size. Gur. Gagra. All Might struggled more and more as the Nomu got stronger and stronger each second. What are they doing? Tamura asked over on the side. Don't they know that only makes it stronger? They might be trying to overload Nomu's quirk. Like All Might did. Kurogyri realized. If that happened, then it's very likely that the Nomu would explode. Tamura's eyes widened, as he realized that now he could actually lose. Nomu. Forget All Might. Focus on the marvels. Kill them now. The Nomu struggled more and more to free itself of All Might's grasp. And after a few more jerks, he managed to free his arms. No. All Might shouted. He charged forward and grabbed Nomu by the neck, but Nomu elbowed All Might in the ribs, breaking them and causing All Might to cough up a lot of blood. Nomu charged forward at the marvels who stood their ground, hoping the thing would just die already. It cocked its fist back as it neared Kota, ready to punch him down and out. Until only a few feet away from its target, its body was frozen completely. Ha! Izuku was confused until he looked and saw a trail of ice leading over to the Nomu from one of the UA students? Shoto Todoroki had joined the fight, and he wasn't alone. Off on the side, Tamura was suddenly hit in the back with an explosion and sent flying forward. Gah! What? Kurogyri barely managed to dodge an attack from Kirishima, going right next to Tamura. Damn it. Kirishima cursed his late timing. Tamura stood up and saw that he and Kurogyri were now surrounded by the returning 1A students. Students! What are you doing here? All Might shouted out. The marvels went in and the problem was not solved after 10 minutes. So we figured something was wrong. Todoroki explained. And we came to help. Mina shouted. You have to leave, it's too dangerous here. All Might warned them. Leave? Are you kidding? We got these shitty villains trapped. Bakugo barked. Shigaraki, I believe it's time for us to leave, Kurogyri suggested. What? No. There's still a chance. Nomu can still beat them. Tamura shouted out, enraged at what his lackey was suggesting. We are already surrounded, even if the Nomu wins, if they take us out it will be with orders and practically useless, and the heroes will take all of us. Kurogyri pointed out, opening a warp gate inside himself. It's time to go. Oh no, you fucking don't. Bakugo shouted, charging forward using his explosions to increase his speed. TCH. Tamura hated it, but Kurogyri had a point. He went back into Kurogyri's warp gate and exited the battle. Just as Bakugo was about to reach them, Kurogyri vanished, leaving through his warp gate away from the USJ. Damn it. Bakugo growled. Meanwhile back with Nomu, he quickly thawed out and broke out of the ice. The lightning doing a lot to thaw out its insides. However, it was clear that Nomu's electricity absorption was starting to reach its limit, its body was bulging, its muscles had started to overtake the metal part and were pulsating with electricity. Rah! Nomu was about to continue its charge, but All Might dashed towards it and tried to grab its body to stop it. Todoroki sent out another wave of ice, only freezing Nomu's lower body, stopping at where All Might's hands were. Rah! Nomu screamed as its body just kept getting more bloated, looking like it could burst at any second. We're almost there. Izuku shouted. I am running out of power. Kota warnet. Nomu broke its legs out of the ice easily and elbowed All Might in the face again, but All Might held on. Again and again, Nomu elbowed him, and with each blow, All Might's grip weakened. He can't hold him for long. It's gonna get us. Eri cried out in fear. Growling. Izuku grit his teeth. They needed more. Kota was running out of power and the Nomu wasn't gonna stay away from them for long. They needed something big and something fast. But they were already using their lightning at full power. What more could they? And then, Izuku got an idea. Guys, we have to hit it with the sky lightning. Izuku explained hurriedly. The what? Kota asked. The lightning that comes from the sky. When we say the name. Izuku explained. It's the most powerful lightning we have. But if we do that, everyone will know who we are. Kota reminded him. It's better than dying. Izuku pointed out. We have to charge it, and the moment we all grab onto it, we all say the name. Are you two with me? Kota and Eri hesitated, but they looked at the Nomu that was slowly pulling All Might off of him and knew they had no other option. They both nodded. Determined to live. All right. Go. All three of them flew towards the Nomu, not letting up with their lightning attacks still. Even when they reached him and clung onto his massive bulging body, they still pumped him with lightning. Nomu turned its attention towards his prey and raised its arms to strike them. But it never got the chance. Shazam! Crockum! From the sky, 3 large lightning bolts all came down on one location, hitting the Nomu all at once. Kum! Its body overtaxed. The moment the lightning hit the Nomu, it exploded, consuming All Might and the marvels. Todoroki barely reacted in time and created a massive wall of ice in front of him, but all that did was soften the blow as the explosion tore through his ice and sent him flying back, and when he hit the floor he was unconscious. The rest of the class had to look away from the blast. Luckily they were far enough away for it not to reach them. A few seconds later the explosion died down, leaving only a massive cloud of dust and ash. Holy crap! Mina cursed, staring at the massive cloud where the explosion had been. All Might! Toru cried in concern. Do you guys think he's okay? TCH. It's All Might. Of course, he's fine. It's the marvels we should be fucking worried about. Bakugo told them. And Todoroki too. He was close to the explosion. Momo pointed out. Well, what are we just standing here for? Kirishima shouted out. We should dash. Let us handle it, Mr. Kirishima. Came a familiar animal's voice. All the students looked up at the USJ entrance, and saw Nizu, standing alongside Ida, and all the other UA Pro heroes. It seems as if we're a bit late, Nizu said. But we'll take care of the rest. Izuku slowly opened his eyes. Oh. He was so tired. He'd used up a lot of energy trying to get Nomu to explode. Not as much as Kota, but still quite a bit. His eyes widened, and he instantly became alert. Nomu. He jolted up, using his fear to energize him, and he quickly looked around. It was hard to see through the smoke, but he could see what was in his immediate surroundings. And what he saw quickly put his fears to rest. He saw Eri and Kota, passed out on the ground, and pieces of Nomu's flesh and mechanical parts scattered around the ground. It was over. They were safe. Exhaustion washed over him, and his legs almost gave way. But he couldn't afford to pass out now. Kota had used up all his energy, so he was out. And Eri most likely passed out from both emotional and physical exhaustion, so he didn't anticipate her waking up anytime soon. It was all up to him to get them home. And fortunately, with all the smoke around them, no one saw them turn back into their kid forms. And thanks to that smoke, he could transform without anyone seeing. Hi. Why are you here? Izuku's pupils shrank, and dread filled his heart. He turned around, and saw Momo Yaoyorozu standing over him. Oh come on. Izuku was tearing up. Why couldn't things be easy for them? Just once. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. Oh dear. I didn't mean to alarm you. Momo quickly tried to reassure Izuku, who she just saw as a scared child. She then bent down and scooped him up. Are you okay? Are you injured? This did not help. Partially because now Izuku was trapped. If he called down his lightning it would hit her too. Also she was now holding Izuku against her body, in her very exposing hero costume, and Izuku did not appreciate that in the slightest. I'm fine now, please let me go. Izuku said, his face beet red, as he lightly struggled to get out of Momo's grip but to no avail. That's no good. I have to get you to the teachers at once. Momo was about to leave when she noticed Kota and Eri lying there. There's more of you? Wherever did you all come from? We're hostages. Izuku came up with the best excuse he could come up with. The villains kidnapped us and used us as hostages. But the Marvels showed up and saved us. I see. But how did you get here? Momo asked him. I don't know. Izuku feigned ignorance, not being able to come up with a better explanation in his flustered state. He hoped that being a scared little kid would make her stop questioning him. Foreignty, it was, and Momo gave him a look of pity. Alright, well, I'll have to get you three some help. And no, it's fine. Izuku tried to convince her, to little avail. Can someone assist me? Momo called out into the smoke. Izuku got more and more nervous, as three figures arrived from the smoke. Mina, Achiko, and Kirishima arrived. Kirishima was carrying an unconscious Todoroki. Hey Momo, what a cutie. Mina stopped and squealed when she saw Izuku and the others, before frowning when she remembered where they were. Wait, why are kids here? Oh no, are they hurt? Achiko said, going up to inspect Izuku, getting much closer than he appreciated. And no. Izuku was quickly trying to figure out a way to escape, but he couldn't think of anything, partially because of his close proximity to a girl. Seeing Izuku's bright red face and the steam that was nearly coming off of him, Mina giggled and looked at Momo. Momo, you might want to let the kid go. You're gonna give him a weird taste for skinships when he grows up. Momo looked down at Izuku's face, and where she was holding him, and her face quickly matched Izuku in redness. I see. Can someone else take them please? I got them. Achiko went over and touched Izuku's head, making him blush further with embarrassment. Before he realized something, he felt weird. Momo let him go, and much to his confusion, he didn't fall to the floor, instead he just floated like he was in space. Whoa! Izuku looked down at his dangling legs, floating in midair. It was slightly different from flying, different in that he had no control of this unlike his flight. He was just floating. You like it? It's my quirk. It lets me turn off the gravity of anything I touch with all 5 of my fingers. Achiko explained to him, before going on to touch both Eri and Kota, bring the 2 unconscious floating kids next to Izuku. This is amazing. That's so cool. You could be a great rescue hero. Seeing a cool quirk did manage to calm Izuku down a bit, before he remembered the situation he was in. Oh no, now we're really trapped. Now all 3 of them were stuck midair. He literally could not run away. Achiko grabbed them all in her arms, keeping them together. How could this get any worse? Huh? As if the universe was trying to say, yes it could, Eri started to wake up. Oh. Izuku thought. Oh, another one is waking up. Kirishima said. Eri looked around groggily for a bit, before her brain woke up. She remembered the Nomu and started looking around to see if it was dead, before quickly realizing that she was in her child form, and that she was in the arms of someone she didn't know. Ah. The student saw the girl starting to panic as tears started glimmering in the corner of her eyes. Hey, it's okay. The villains are gone now. Mina tried to reassure her, but to no avail. Before Eri could say the word, Izuku covered her mouth. Don't say it. Izuku shouted. Don't say the word. Eri gave him a confused and fearful look, and Izuku gave her a determined, reassuring look in return. We're okay, you have to trust me. Izuku told her. The determination in Izuku's voice, and the fact that it was Izuku saying it, calmed Eri down to a degree, and she gave him a look showing her trust in him. Izuku took his hand off of Eri's mouth, and turned to the very confused UA students. Sorry about her. Eri gets scared very easily. And she was trying to say a no word so I had to stop her. Sorry. The students gave them a weird look, before shrugging it off. They were kids after all. XXXXXXXXX. Any sign of the Marvels? Nizu asked Snipe after the hero just got back from surveying the building. None. Sorry. Snipe apologized. Nizu sighed and shook his head. Well, they couldn't have gone through the exits, we had those covered. Did you see any signs of them flying through the roof? No. Snipe answered. But it's possible I missed something. Well, you should focus on rounding up the remaining villains. Nizu told the hero, who nodded and ran back into the building. Nizu's ever-present was nearly slipping. This was a disaster. Villains attacked his students with an all-might-worthy monster, and the marvels broke in, and now nobody knew where they were. At least no one was hurt, except All Might. Fortunately Semnitus came in and kept anyone from seeing him in his skinny form, but he was still in pretty bad shape all things considered. Principal Nizu. The animal principal heard one of his students shout from behind him. Now, whatever Nizu expected to see when he turned around, this was not it. Behind him was Achiko Uraraka, carrying 3 children who were very obviously smaller versions of the marvels. Nizu thought that their true forms may have been smaller than their marvel forms, but he never expected them to be actual children. This made things so much more complicated. His students didn't seem to realize who they had in their grasp. Most likely they didn't think too much about it because they were children. Perhaps they were just writing off their obvious resemblance to the marvels as a coincidence. And Nizu might have been able to do the same, if it weren't for the fact that Kota Izumi, someone they suspected to be related to Marvel Aoi, was here, where the marvels were, whom had seemingly disappeared, and he was right next to a boy that looked like Marvel Midori and a girl that looked like Marvel Aka. As the children approached him, Nizu thought about the best way to proceed. Children? Where on earth did you find them? They were in the smoke. The place where All Might and the marvels fought that monster. Momo explained. They said the League kidnapped them to use them as hostages. Nizu looked at Marvel Midori and Marvel Aka, who were giving him a desperate look that said, please buy it. If he wasn't sure they were the marvels before, he would be now. I see. Well, it's a good thing we found them then. Nizu would play along. It was all part of his plan. Do you two think you can take the third one and make it home by yourselves? The 2 conscious marvels, and the students looked at him in shock. Izuku and Eri answered immediately. Well then, Ms. Uraraka, please put them down so they can go home. Nizu instructed his student. Principal Nizu, you can't be serious? Momo asked the principal. Of course I am, they appear to be uninjured, and they said they can make it home. Nizu told her. Ms. Uraraka. If you would. But Achiko stopped when she saw the look Nizu was giving her, telling her that this was not a request. With some trepidation, Achiko set the children down on the ground, and undid the effects of her quirk. Almost immediately, Izuku grabbed the unconscious Kota's arms. Thank you for everything, but we should get home now. Our parents will be worried. Eri grabbed his legs. Eri quickly did as instructed, and the 2 ran off, carrying Kota with them. Once they were out of earshot, Nizu turned to his students. Being me Ms. Hagakure, with haste. XXXXXXXXX. After getting a good distance away from UA, the kids ducked into an alleyway, and placed Kota on the ground, before stopping to catch their breath. Izuku stopped when suddenly Eri latched onto him, and started crying into his shoulder. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The horned girl sobbed. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Eri kept sobbing, muttering she was sobbing, and Izuku put his arms around her and started patting her on the back. It's okay. It's okay. Izuku reassured her. We're okay. It's all over now. After a few minutes, Izuku managed to calm her down. Let's just go home. He told her, looking around to make sure no one was looking, before looking back at Eri. Do you have enough energy to get back home? I think so. Eri stuttered. I'm tired. We can rest when we get home. Izuku told her. Here, let's do it together. 3, 2, 1. Shazam! They both shouted at the same time. Crockum! Lightning came out of the clear sky, and struck the 2 of them, transforming them into their champion forms. Izuku grabbed Kota, and the 2 took off into the sky. Little did they know, someone had been watching. They just couldn't see her. XXXXXXXXXX. Once again the pro-heroes were gathered in a police briefing room. Given that it was the same heroes that had been gathered for the Marvels meeting, the heroes assumed this meeting was once again about the troublesome trio. Thank you for gathering, everyone. Nizu was in the front of the room this time. As you may have surmised, we will be talking about the Marvels again. Did we manage to find their identities? Kemui Woods asked. Can we finally go after them? Miriko asked eagerly. Yes, and no. Nizu answered. We did find out their identities, but it's complicated. Of course it is, Aizawa said, while in a full body cast. Nizu pulled out a remote, and pressed the power button, displaying the image of Izuku, Eri, and Kota in their child forms on a screen behind him. These are the Marvels' true forms. What? Shouted pretty much every hero there. Wait a minute, are you telling me that the Marvels are children? Ryukyu shouted in shock and outrage. All this time we've been fighting kids? Fat Gum was in disbelief, with a look of shock and horror on his face. Are you saying we've been getting our asses handed to us by toddlers? Mariko shouted, now seeming even more pissed than before. Everyone, please quiet down. Crust told everyone, and after a few minutes, the room became quiet. Principal Nizu, please explain. How could the Marvels, some of the most powerful vigilantes in history, be children who don't even appear to be over 10? Well, as you are all likely well aware, there was an attack on UA 2 days ago. Nizu started to explain. Me and my staff will be handling the issue of the League of Villains, but another group that showed up was the Marvels. However, as we were cleaning up, one of my students came to me, holding these 3 children together. Apparently they were found where the Marvels had last been seen fighting the villains, and their explanation was that they were taken hostage, although there was no report of anyone seeing them anywhere in the facility beforehand, and all the villains we captured knew nothing of any hostages. They also said they needed to get home to their parents, despite the fact that all of them are orphans. And if you remember correctly, one of them is Kota Izumi, someone we suspected was connected to Marvel Aoi. So his appearance here alongside 2 other children who look identical to Marvel Midori and AKA, tells me that they are in fact the Marvels. And also, this. Nizu pressed a button on the remote, and it showed a video of Eri and Izuku transforming, before flying away with Kota. There were a few moments of silence in the room, before Fat Gum spoke. So what do we do now? He asked. They're kids. We can't just beat them into submission. Why not? Mariko gave him an irritated look. Why not? Fat Gum looked at the rabbit hero with fury in his eyes. They're kids. They're like, Nizu, how old are they? Aoi and AKA are 7, Midori is 8. Nizu answered. Are you telling me you don't have an issue with fighting kids who haven't even hit the double digits yet? Fat Gum shouted. Well, what are we gonna do? Just ask them nicely to stop. Mariko asked sarcastically. You think any kid with that much power would bother listening to us? There has to be a better way. Crust protested. What kind of heroes would we be if we laid our hands on innocent children? Innocent? Hawks raised an eyebrow. They're vigilantes. They're children. Crust argued. They don't know the consequences of what they're doing. And they're orphans. They don't have any parents to explain this to them. We need to tell them that what they're doing is dash. And you think they're just gonna stand there and let you explain it to them? Aizawa said, his voice slightly muffled by the bandages. I'm not any more eager about the thought of attacking orphan children, but we don't have much a choice here. There's always a choice. Fat Gum argued. We're heroes. We find a way to do what's right. Heroes also have to know when to compromise. Night Eye finally spoke up. Nizu, before we continue this debate, let's hear more about these children. Very well. Nizu pressed another button on the remote, and the screen showed an image of Kota. Kota Izumi. Son the water hose duo. We've gone over most of the information about him. Except for a few things. One of which is his quirk. Hydrokinesis. A combination of his parents' quirks, it allows him to shoot water from his palms, and control it. An ability Marvel Aoi had never displayed, until the USJ where All Might said he saw Marvel Aoi use this ability. And as for the other bit of information, well, we'll get to that later. Nizu pressed a button, and the image changed, this time to show Izuku. This is Izuku Midoriya. Funnily enough, his last name was similar to his vigilante name the whole time. He was diagnosed as quirkless at age 6, with his father walking out on him soon after. Scum. Ryukyu scowled. Not too long after, his mother died in a fire. And he was placed into the care of family friend, Mitsuki Bakugo, and her husband Masaru. However, a few days later he ran away. Nizu explained. Given what we know about the Bakugo family, abuse is suspected as a possible reason why he ran. Although questioning their son has now shown any evidence of this. Poor kid. Being quirkless can't be easy. Fat Gum gave the image a sad look. He would have never thought that kid smiling brightly in the photo would have gone through so much. Next, we have Eri. Nizu pressed a button, and showed an image of Eri, or rather, a drawing of Eri. Why is it a drawing and not a picture like the other two? Kamui asked. Because there are no pictures of her. Nizu explained. There is no information about her, at all. No information? Night Eye asked. No parents, backstory, no school information? Nothing? No. Nizu shook his head. The only reason we know her name is Eri is because according to one of my students, Midoriya called her that. And that's assuming he used her real name. She has no records, no birth certificate, and there have been no missing children reports fitting her description. And there has been only one report of her being seen before. Watch. Nizu pressed another button, and another video played on the screen. This time it showed a security camera feed from a train station. Everything was happening as usual, until a cry was heard from out of view. Help! Izuku, Kota and Eri all ran in. Bad men. They touched me in my no-no places. And now I can't be a bride anymore. Eri cried. The heroes then watched as the crowd rushed the children onto the train, as two of Overhaul's goons came in. Those are Overhaul's men. Night Eye pointed out as the video ended. Indeed. But it doesn't end there. Nizu explained. Because those 3 children never got off that train. What? Death Arms asked. The people on that train reported that the children simply vanished in a flash of light. Nizu explained. They never got off that train. And funnily enough, do you want to know who did get off that train? The Marvels. Wait, if we had this information then how didn't we know their identity sooner? Death Arms asked. Because no one noticed the Marvels on the train. Nizu continued. No one reported the Marvels teleporting or suddenly appearing. But when we tracked down the people on the train and at the station, none of them said they remembered the Marvels getting on the train. Somehow the Marvels reappeared on the train, without anyone noticing. That doesn't sound possible. Best Jeanist commented. Well, whatever happened, the next time these kids were at a police station. They entered and were seen by some officers, but they left being carried, unconscious, by those same officers. Who claimed that they were bringing them home. Nizu explained. But seeing as how they were definitely never brought back, and the children were being chased by Overhaul's men for whatever reason, it's safe to say that those officers knocked them unconscious, and brought them to Overhaul. Night Eye scowled. That must have been why no one ever saw the Marvels enter Overhaul's base. And why they were there to begin with. As well as all those reports of lightning bolts coming out of the sky. Endeavor added. From what we've seen, they need to be hit by lightning that they summoned to transform in and out of their Marvel forms. But none of this explains how they got their powers in the first place. Ryukyu pointed out. I have a theory. Nizu said. But first a question. Why were they running from Overhaul and his henchmen? Because they're crooks. Fat Gum stated the obvious. But if they had their powers, then why not just find a conspicuous place to transform, and take them down themselves? Nizu pointed out. If they had their powers, why bother with this? Unless of course, they didn't have their powers yet. Night Eye came to the same conclusion Nizu did. Right, I believe whatever happened on that train, is when they were given their powers. Nizu said. Because it's very clear they weren't born with them at this point. But as to who or what gave them their powers, I have no ideas. That was a lie. He had a prediction that All for One was behind this. But it's not like he could tell anyone else that. Well then our mission is clear, isn't it? Endeavor said. We need to take them out, and fast. Fat Gum opened his mouth to retort, but Endeavor beat him to it. I understand that they're children, but that only makes them more dangerous. Endeavor countered. Children are impulsive, and prone to act on emotion. Marvel Aoi has shown this numerous times. What if one day Marvel Aoi has enough of a particular news station, and decides to pay them a visit? How much destruction do you think a child with the power of All Might, throwing a tantrum would cause? After that there was a pause. As the more tentative heroes had to concede to the fact that the Flame Hero had a point. Children that young, should not be trusted with power that great. It's amazing that they haven't killed anyone yet. Endeavor continued. But we can't just wait until they either make a mistake or just grow tired of being slandered in the media. We need to take them down before someone gets hurt. Not to mention, there is someone capable of giving power like this to people, and the Marvels are our only lead. They're too important to allow things like age to stop us. It's not an option. Once again, the heroes in the room who weren't already on board had to concede. Although it was obvious to see they didn't like it one bit. Thank you, Endeavor. Nizu said, before continuing. Now, we can't release their identities to the public for obvious reasons. If people found out that that kind of power was in the hands of children, it would cause a panic. Not to mention it would harm hero society regardless of our actions. On one hand you'll have people asking how we haven't managed to catch 2 7-year-olds and an 8-year-old yet, and on the other hand, you'll have people outraged that we'll be fighting children at all. However, this information will be given out to a limited number of pro heroes. Suddenly Crust raised his hand. Yes? Nizu called on him. You don't think that overhaul actually touched the girl in that way, do you? Crust asked, his face showing that he desperately hoped the answer was no. Suddenly the mood in the room shifted, as everyone's faces quickly matched Crust, as they looked at Nizu for an answer. I would not know. Nizu answered, the smile gone from his face. Night Eye was the one who had been studying the Yakuza, so it would be up to him. Everyone looked at Night Eye, whose expression remained neutral, as he pushed up his glasses. Given what I know of Kai Chisaki, I wouldn't have suspected it of him, but I wouldn't put it above him either. And given Marvel's AKA's behavior, it's most certainly not out of the question. Shit, that's not an answer. Miriko shouted. Well, I don't have a definitive answer. Night Eye retorted. That is the best I have. And that uncertain and uncomfortable feeling would plague the room for the rest of the meeting, as the heroes wondered what that girl went through. XXXXXXXX. I was punching orphans. Naomasa sighed as his friend vomited blood all over his desk. That's about how I thought you would react to the news. After he stopped choking on his own blood, All Might spoke up. I was punching orphans. Orhan children. Naomasa sighed. He was gonna be like that for a while. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share the video and support the original writer. See you in the next video?